Yeah, thank you, Christina. So when Christina and I were first talking about this, about, tapping into inner knowing and consent, what really rose to the surface for me, oh, I'm hearing feedback now, Christina. Oh, no, it's gone. What really rose to the surface for me was all of the kind of layered practices that I put in place and that a lot of my clients put in place so that we're tapping into our inner self before we come to a point of consent, right? And so it's all about that pre-work that we're doing, which really isn't pre-work, it's foundational work that we're doing, so that when we are at a point of choice, we know who we are, and we know who's doing the choosing. And for me, that layered approach includes a lot of different pieces. And of course, it looks different for everyone. Dream work to me is essential in learning who we are or reconnecting with who we are. And so doing some form of mining dreams every day and letting the dream continue to dream, which means not closing the dream and saying, I know what this means. It's more about, I have a meaning, and it might mean that, and then what else might it mean? And allowing it to keep dreaming us. Another layer for me has been breath work. And the breath work that has really been speaking to me and that I've really been sharing with my clients has been coherent breath work, but without any music, right? Because I know that, especially in the biohacker world, Christina, that there's a lot of breath work that's done with really loud music. And I love that. And that is transporting and often trance-inducing for me. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is breath work that is bare and silent, and that to me feels like a swallow diving from a cliff into who we really are, and creates that space for images and thoughts and felt sense to bubble up as a way of tapping into that kind of understory that lives within us. Another layer for me has been, I guess, what we would call focusing, or, at HPI, we called it embodiment. Just that, but that focusing, the steps of focusing, which come from Eugene Genlin. He was big in the 70s and then somehow fell by the wayside. And I think he is a shaman. The way that he very clearly outlined what we know of as embodied knowing. And he outlined these steps for people who really had no experience of what that meant, right? To dive into the body, to find the inner wisdom. And so doing some form of focusing every day has been really pivotal for me. Some sort of intention setting, divination, connecting with the more than human world, whatever, paradigm that we are connected to, has been pivotal for me lately. It's been walking in the moonlight, so very early in the morning. In my neighborhood, there is a circle. It used to be a racetrack where I live in San Francisco. And so I walk that circle and cast a circle every morning. But it can be as simple as, doing it in your bedroom, whatever that is, whether it's prayer or circle casting. I don't think it matters. I think it's the connection that really matters. And then all of this over time and keeping track of it. I write down things that arise from these practices over time, and it's like a palimpsest of the self. It's what happens. It's layer upon layer, day by day. And once I fill an entire journal, it's amazing. It's this divine story of me. And my becoming as well, because as I was talking to a client today, he was saying that he wants to know who he is, and that it's changing. And of course it is, because we're always changing and growing and evolving. And so it's that beautiful evolution of who we are. And I've been doing these practices for a long time, and often the way they show up with clients is pieces of it, or self-design ceremony, which is one of my special yams right next to dream work, is designing ritual and ceremony that's meaningful for people, that helps people either threshold or mark a threshold that has already been crossed, which is usually what it's about. And to kind of declare, that this is who they are and they're becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I have. Thank you.
Rich. Thank you for all that richness, Ronit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Coaches, do you have anything that you want to say about this idea of layering? What does this bring for you?
I really resonate, Ronit, with the layering analogy through journaling. When I think of the evolution of our souls and the path that we're on here, it's becoming more who we are all the time, being married with being, with our presence, with our awareness, and opening up to find ourselves in the earth, to find ourselves in the eyes of somebody else. And I love the really big perspective that you just laid for us as the foundation for this conversation. It feels so expansive, and there's so much possibility from here, from what you just created for us.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, beautiful opening words, Ronit. And for me, the layering language brings to mind almost an elevator and us kind of dropping slowly further down into ourselves. And something that feels really important to me is, I get the sense that a lot of us here do spirit work or do work that acknowledges other realms. And that's really dear to my heart in my own life. And I'm also really passionate about holding that in a way and holding that in our education that doesn't make it essential for people to subscribe to any kind of spirituality to be able to have a sense of inner connection and self-knowing. And so for me, I guess I look at it really as connection to the body, as knowing ourselves as a whole, rather than just being cognitively based, which is so common in the modern world. And so I think all of your practices that you've mentioned, they are both spiritual, and they can also have the spiritual lens removed, and they're actually just practices to go deeper into ourselves and our bodies. And that's what excites me about these spaces, is it's so diverse and it can be so meaningful for us on a spiritual level, but they can also just be practices for us to connect to all of the things that make up this physical and other body, whatever that is. And I think what you've said is form some practices, because we need them to be able to get to know ourselves better, because the modern world doesn't offer many, actually, to know ourselves on a deeper level. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordon. Yeah, I just, may I weigh in, Christine?
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, because I don't want to disenfranchise people who might be scared of the spiritual. And so, I want to make it as accessible as possible for any level. Absolutely. And some people say they're connecting to their higher self, right? Cool. And other people are connecting to deities. And really just the connection, is important to invite them in there. So I love the way you frame that, Jordon. Thank you.
Yeah, that feels very rich for me as well. I know Ronit's heard me talk about this, and it's funny for me because I'm so outside the box already, but there's an aspect of me not wanting to present myself so spiritually that I'm not that I'm disenfranchising. I'm pushing away people because deeply I believe that really just helping people connect to their own knowing is what will will lay the path for them to find what is in service. And when they're there, it'll rise all of us up, when they're deeply connected. So I don't like to disenfranchise also. So I really appreciate that. This foundationality of this is, it feels important, like I said before. And I feel with all of these layered pieces that you gave to us, it brings to me this aspect of awareness and intention that I find to be important. Because I know actually a lot of people that are doing daily practices here's a good example. I know a lot of people that meditate every morning. And then they get up and walk angry through their life.
Yes.
Yeah. So creating these layered practices, or creating practices with the intention of diving deeper into our own selves. I find intention just so critical for me when it comes to consent, or when it comes to a lot of whatever I'm creating. I like to really pay attention to my intentionality. So that's my bit on that. Mm-hmm.
Mm. I'm thinking of what you said at the beginning, Christina.
Mm.
Right, the voice that you had, and now the voice that you have.
Mm.
And what's bubbling up for me is that I've done these practices for a long time, and I was doing practices and being very strong and aggressive. And it served me at that time in my youth. And that's not at all what is happening now. So it is very possible to walk through life angrily and aggressively and defensively, doing all the right things, whatever that means. And now it's about being strong and softer and heartful and open and landed, which is a very different place. And it is about that intention.
Mm. Yeah. We relate on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, we relate on that one. Tova, do you have anything here that you want to bring forward?
Hi, sure. One thing that you mentioned, Ronit, when we're feeling into what our dreams are, not closing that really resonated with me, because I find when I get attached to, I find when I get attached to something and close it off, I'm more in my head and not dropped into my body and my intuition, and just allowing whatever is going to arise. And I also really resonated with the breath work piece, and just being in silence in breath work, and again, just allowing what arises to arise, and really reconnecting to ourselves that way. So thank you.